So again, good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Hanshu. You know me also from the other sessions. Most of you, I guess, from the international track, which I curate and host. Did it last year, did it this year. And we still have 2 other panels today after this one in the international track. While this is not a panel, but an interview on a very interesting topic. We are talking about the comeback of the night train, which I think most of you, just like me, find personally very interesting and much needed. I'm absolutely delighted to have Elmer van Buren, who is the co-founder of the European Sleeper, based in the Netherlands. By the way, I'm based in the Netherlands too. Elmer, where are you actually based in the Netherlands? And it's in Utrecht, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay, I'm based in Rotterdam. All right. So welcome. It's a pleasure having you. Let me introduce you to our audience. So Elmer is the co-founder and managing director of the European Sleeper. It's a Netherlands-based startup railway company dedicated entirely to sleeper trains. The European Sleeper is currently preparing. Sorry, I have to admit people in the waiting room in parallel. Is currently preparing the first line from Belgium and the Netherlands to Berlin and Prague. Bound to start in April 2022, so still some months to go. Elmer has over 15 years of experience in working in the railway industry, before working several years in the consultancy sector. People. So with the recently renewed interest in sleeper trains, he decided now it's a time to pursue this his passion, and he grew up with that, so he will certainly tell about that too. Elmer has a strong belief that we need a new economical paradigm, so it's a broader vision, and which is based on purpose rather than growth, to overcome the challenges which we are all facing, such as climate change and inequality. Well, welcome, Elmer. Hi.
Thank you.
So, well, let's dive in immediately into the topic. What is a European sleeper, and why? How on earth comes it that someone is starting a railway company? I mean, this is certainly not something what comes to your mind every day. I mean, most of them, most of our audience, I assume.
I hope not, because that would mean a lot of competition for us. So yeah, European Sleeper is a railway company. That means that we want to operate trains, and we want to specialize specifically in night trains. So that those are trains that are running through the night and that enable you to sleep on board in a proper way. So not just the trains that have seats, but trains that have beds. Why on earth start a train company? Because it's possible, according to European regulations, it's possible to start this kind of company. And because I've had this dream for 20 years, and it seems that now is the time to start it.
Wait a second. So now you're saying the time to start it. Why now? I mean, Deutsche Bahn sold it a couple of years ago. Now you want to revive that, what we thought is actually dead as a business. So why is the time now to do that?
Well, the sleeper train is a very good way to make the train a suitable means of transport for longer distances in Europe. So usually the assumption is that the train is suitable for around about maximum 700, 800 kilometers, because that's what you can reach if you travel during the day and if you have proper infrastructure. But if we want to make the sustainable travel network better and more redundant, we need to cover longer distances. And this you can achieve by also traveling in the night. Because the train is not the fastest way to travel. I mean, it's slower than airplane, obviously. So you need to be smarter. You need to travel during the night. And like that, you can cover 1,200 to 1,500 kilometers. And like that, you can make the train suitable for longer distances as well. And yeah, why now? I mean, So the night trains were on decline. Basically, Deutsche Bahn decided to stop. But they didn't stop because they were not profitable or because there was no demand. They decided to stop because they didn't want to do it anymore. And they had some good reasons for them, but they were their own reasons, basically. And it doesn't mean that night trains are not useful anymore. So this is a good enough reason, I think, to restart it.
Yeah, and you're not alone in Europe. You have several other also state-owned operating companies. It's in Sweden. You have, well, of course, you have the state-owned the SBB in Switzerland. You have Austria. You have also, I don't know how SNCF in France is operating night trains correctly.
They are operating. Yeah.
Okay.
They are operating night trains, and they want to make a comeback as well. But that is primarily because of the state, the French state, who wants it now. So, yeah.
Okay, now we're already immediately also in this almost political playing field, which you're where you land, if you like it or not, with this topic. So I'm also curious. What is your what do you see as the main bottlenecks bringing it back? When we prepared this conversation, you also told me about, of course, international ticketing systems, etc. So, what are the challenges you're facing?
Well, the challenges, of course, are plenty. It's almost impossible to tell where to start, but to name just a few is access to the, so for new operators, of course, it's very important that you get access to the infrastructure. So that means that you can get a proper timetable that is attractive enough that you can operate your train in a way that it's also economically feasible. So it should be attractive and not too long. And that's very hard to find a place in the timetable. We need rolling stock, so trains basically to operate and transport people. And the trains are very short in supply, especially night trains, because night trains are becoming popular again. That means that everyone is after second-hand night trains now, and prices are skyrocketing. That is also because there was such underinvestment in night trains in recent years and decades that there are very few sleeper trains on the market, whereas other trains are less short in supply. And in order to solve that problem, investment is needed into new rolling stock. But in order to get that, of course, funding is paramount, and that is very difficult to obtain for a startup company, in comparison to a state-owned incumbent company that has much easier access to financing.
Let me just interrupt. Excuse
Sure.
To the audience, please just put your questions in the chat, and I'm happy to ask you questions. Then you can just stay mute, and I will take it from there. Sorry, just go ahead.
Yeah, so those are two challenges. Other than that, well, I think obviously you need access to the customer as well, which means that people who travel by train, if they are keen train travelers, they know that they can go to Deutsche Bahn or to NS or to other state incumbent operators to find a train ticket. But it's not so obvious for people that there's a new company called European Sleeper, and we need to still establish our brand and our name. So in order to make the customers acquainted with us and to make them find our products, we need to be in the shop window with the incumbent operators. And that is something that means that they need to be willing to accept us, which is luckily the case, but also it is about technical challenges. How do you connect to the existing ticketing systems and to make sure that the tickets are sold? So these are just a few of the many challenges that we are facing here.
So let me get this straight. This is an interesting point. So France is actually taking it because French state wants it. And Deutsche Bahn is not back into night train business, but will sell you tickets, right?
That's true. And what you see, maybe to take to elaborate on your point of states wanting it. So what we see is, if you allow me, what we see is that the interest in night trains was revived because of users and interest groups and activists who said, hey, listen, those night trains are actually not bad. You should keep them or bring them back. This then sparked some interest with a certain part of the press and then with some political parties like, well, primarily, of course, Green parties. And also the Fridays for Future movement of Greta Thunberg helped a lot in this. So then, like this, the sleeper train came back on the agenda in several countries. Of course, Austria was one because Austrian railways are doing it still. But it's actually Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, France, Belgium, Netherlands. You could more or less say everything except for Germany, or well, some other, I mean, I don't know really about the eastern part of Europe, but in the eastern part of Europe, night trains are still a thing because they don't have high-speed lines. So night trains for them are still existing.
Yeah.
Like this, it came back on the agenda. And then you see that if you want to start a project like this, you need the government of a country to be willing to support this kind of initiative.
Yeah.
Even if this is an open access initiative, which means that the state is not supporting it with money for the operation. And this is the way we also will operate. This is, by the way, not the way it's operated in France. They get a lot of state support there because they have a very costly operation. But in Germany, the case is that long distance trains are not managed by the state because it's an open access operation, and that means that the German government says we don't have anything to say in this. It's purely up to the operators to put the offer on the market. We don't interfere with that, but they also don't show what direction it should be going. So there is no political direction here at all in Germany. Maybe that will change. I mean, you see that it's changing somehow, but I think it depends in Germany a lot on the government agreement that will be made in the coming months.
Yes. This I wanted to ask that. So I assume this will have an impact on that. Mm-hmm. Learning that it was also blocked when in the government, the German government, when the Swedes wanted to cross Germany. You guys also have trouble with Germany. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry for that.
To be fair, we have trouble in other countries as well. So I mean, it's not.
Fortunately, all right. Because there are not yet questions from the audience, I just continue because I have a lot of questions. So I think an interesting point is because basically you are not, some point is not clear for the audience. You are not 100 people business. You are basically now you hired the first co-worker, now you're 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 people working full time on it.
So we have me working full time on it and my co-founder about 2 days a week. Then we have 1 employee now who's working 3 days a week. Next one coming up, hopefully. Yeah. Also 3 days a week. So that brings us to 3 full-time units approximately, I think. And then of course we hire a number of people like independent entrepreneurs who help us with certain specific knowledge or skills that they have, like in financial modeling or marketing and communication and that kind of thing. So if you look at the number of people that is now involved, because I like to count it more like that, because for me it's about the people that are involved, not really about the hours. It's 15 roundabout. So it is, but it's still, I mean, if you compare that with an incumbent train operator, it's still of course nothing.
Yes, exactly. That's still, of course, nothing. So but perhaps you can tell me, because how do you see this business model? Because you see it also as a future business model and as linked to your legal structure. We will come back to that later on. But basically, you own the commercial model, and you have also a vision on the European system, how it should ideally work. Which is not yet the case, but perhaps you tell us more about that, because I think you're also trying to be a thought leader on that, how you could have more diversity in the market?
Yeah, so maybe first it's good to explain that our current way of working is that we ourselves, we do not have rolling stock, we do not have train drivers, we do not have conductors. So basically, and we do it like this because starting a whole operation, including an operating license and all the staff that you need to hire and all the trains that you need to buy, of course you can do that, but it is a lot of work to build it up. And we wanted to be agile and start within 1.5 years, which is extremely ambitious. But in order to achieve this, we chose a model where we will look for partners in every country that we will pass, and we chose to start developing one first route so that we could really focus on that. And we're looking for partners in each of the countries that we're passing, and that means that currently we already have the partner established in the Czech Republic. That's RegioJet, which is a very experienced private operator, the most experienced private operator in Central Europe, I would say, with 10 years experience and running in, I think, 5 countries already. So that's a good base. They also bring in the rolling stock, and they will be operator in the Czech Republic. So that is then covered, so to say. And then, of course, we're looking also for operators in Belgium, in Netherlands, in Germany. So you need to have an operator or at least someone with a license in each country. And you can have, as a company, licenses in more countries, but usually companies have a license in 1 or 2 countries at the most. So in this case, we are building it up like that. And that means, of course, that the flesh on the bone in terms of people that are needed for the operation comes from our partners, not from us. So in the end, of course, more people will be involved and it will become bigger, but that is outsourced. For the future, we are thinking that if this will pull off, if we manage to pull it off, then we can actually start considering to insource certain functions. If a certain network starts to build in a certain country, of course, then you can consider getting your own license, getting your own people to operate. But that only makes sense if you have more than 1 train a day running. With 1 train a day, it's a very costly thing to set up. So this is the development perspective, basically. And what also could happen is that we turn it into a sort of franchise model where we will be the owners of the brand and all the things that are related to the product, and where train operating companies can then lend it for a fee to operate under the European Sleeper brand, basically. This is a model that Flix Mobility is also using, for instance. Because if you see a Flix bus, it's not actually, the buses are not Flix buses.
Yeah. So basically, the Deutsche Bahn will then make use of your brand again over in 5 years.
Could be, if they're interested, they're very welcome to do that. Yeah, sure. Open to talks. At the moment, they are actually cooperative in the sense that they want to sell our tickets. They're very happy to sell the tickets. So I mean, we're in positive talks with them. They just don't want to pick up the glove themselves. Yeah.
Hey, and well, now you're actually talking about sort of a new operating system for European train system. And yesterday we had someone from a French bank that's called Green God Bank, and they even don't have an own license. It's the same situation now. They're operating on the license from another bank, which limits them in a certain way, but it's also about this new business model and having a lot of advantages, but also some disadvantages. But this is a good way to start. I think it's important to make this point also for the audience. So you both have some points in common in how you approach it structurally. But well, let's get back to the train system in Europe, because there we face problems on international ticketing. If I want to travel from here to southern Italy, it's a total nightmare. So I always contact my former traveler's office, which is still based in Germany. I'm there since 20 years, a client, and they'll please help me to get a ticket from Rotterdam, where I live, to southern Italy, because otherwise it's just crazy. It's impossible. So international ticketing, I think, is an interesting point. So I would be curious, what do you think on that, and how do you see that? And you were mentioning also, it's of course an issue that you do not have equal access to subsidies. Funds from the private market is also an issue. because you need to buy the rolling stock. You just that people are chasing the second-hand trains. So perhaps there's also a business case for our people listening. Perhaps you should just go into that. But what is this playing field here? I mean, what needs to change to get more international connections?
Okay, well, to be honest, you are asking 6 questions at a time, I think. But let me try to start with the ticketing issue. Mm-hmm. Of course, it is unexplainable to customers that if you want to make an international train journey, it is complicated to get a ticket. So it should be as easy as taking a flight or taking your own car. And that is the absolute necessity. I mean, and we should not rest before we are at that level. And anything else is just obscenity, I think, for customers. And it's just so the problem here is that there is a very strong relationship between those who transport people are also the ones that are allowed to create the products and to sell them to the market. And this is a connection that was made somewhere in 1830 when the first train started to run, and when it was obvious that if you have a train station, you also have a ticket window. And then, so that was very practical, but it is from a time when we did not have internet. Now, of course, it is very well possible to disconnect these two functions from each other. So it is possible to say, hey, there are companies that are better at targeting the customer and finding out what the needs of the customer are. And there are companies that are good at transporting people.
So what you mean is we have the infrastructure not separated from the operating company.
Well, that is on the train operating part, that is officially separated, those two things. But also on the distribution, in the distribution world, so in the world of selling train tickets, there is this connection between the operators and the selling are the same. So you could say the infrastructure is linked also to it's a similar problem. So in order to change this, operators need to accept that third-party vendors are the ones that are better at selling than they themselves, because they know where to find the customers, and they are not necessarily in the same country where they are operating. Because what happens with a company, well, take Deutsche Bahn again as an example, because they're very useful. They are based in Germany. They primarily operate trains within Germany. I mean, international trains are important, but let's not forget that 95% of the trains operate within one country. And it's also an important market. So there's a good reason why they focus on that. And their customer base is very much in Germany. So they not automatically target international customers with international needs of, for instance, traveling from Netherlands to southern Italy. And I think that's all very logical, but the way out is that these companies accept and embrace the fact that they are not the ones who are best suited to solve this problem, and they should make their capacity on their trains available to others that would then be able to integrate it better for the customer. And we as European Sleeper, I mean, we understand this fully, and we throw everything out of the window as much as we can. But companies are afraid to lose the relationship with the customer. So that means that they say, this is our customer and we want to keep it in our database. And they don't care that at that moment they have 100,000 customers in their database, where they could have 1 million people in the train if they do it differently. I think that's downright stupid. I mean, I don't have another word for that, but yeah, I mean, it's just me. So, and of course, I'm telling this wherever I can, and you see that it's actually changing. So I see within the railway companies that this thinking is changing. Also with Deutsche Bahn, let's be fair, it's changing, but the systems that they built in order to get the tickets across to the people, so the distribution systems, they are still partly from the 70s. So the infrastructure that is created for distribution is very much outdated, and this needs a lot of time to redo, and it needs a lot of legislation from the European Union to force the companies to create open standards, to share data, etc., etc. And this is everything, all the standards and all the legislation is already in place, but to implement it One of the examples here is national access points. There's legislation in place that forces country to create national access points for timetable data, but countries are taking ages to implement it. So yeah, this is from a commercial perspective, this is very silly to do this.
Yeah.
And your other questions I forgot already, so you will have to.
But you are basically addressing, and I think this is interesting to hear for everyone, how much disruption is actually needed in this quite old-fashioned market. And when we're sitting in a train and you have no idea actually what sort of an system is behind that, and which holds back this innovation. But still, and this is, I find really fantastic. Still, you're in this market, and still you will launch the first night train, the first connection next year. So I think it's also interesting for our audience that you tell us and share us a little bit more about the business model and also about your legal structure, because you're a cooperative and you have how do you call them, members, 250, right? And the shares which you the board were sold out in 15 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
So just and you learned something also on this structure and to build the structure in this way. And you told me before, and I think this is interesting for all our founders here in the chat that you share that.
Yeah, so indeed we are a cooperative. I think we have 370 members at the moment, and we use this. We intentionally founded a cooperative because this legal structure in the Netherlands enables us to have private small investors on board. So people who want to chip in some money. So the starting amount with us is 250 euros. Because, as I said, it's the users and the activists and the interest groups that said, hey, the night train has to come back. So we clearly want to involve these people with us because we think they have good ideas. And this is our way to connect with them and to involve them. And it works. I mean, of course, we did campaign before we started. We launched the start of our campaign for working capital. We did do something on social media, but actually everything was based on free publicity and organic growth of our following, and nothing bold at all. It works. It talks to people, and this is also, I think, an interesting thing to remark is that it's not only train fans, but it's a very broad audience of people that are into sustainability, people that are into trains, people that love the fact that you can actually just do this, start this up. So it's a very broad audience. One of the things also I wanted to do, and this is what you meant, I think, with the learning that is currently going on. One of the things that I really wanted is to create a structure in which shareholder value is not at the first position, because I think that wherever shareholder value is at the first position of interest, it means that you're looking at reducing costs, and wherever you're looking at reducing costs, someone is paying the bill, be it in the quality of your product that is getting worse, or your employees getting a unfair treatment or a bad pay, or a supplier that is not getting what he deserves, or whatever you can imagine. And this is what I call a paradigm which we need to get rid of. So I wanted to create a structure that doesn't put the shareholder value in the first place. Now, reality is that when we created the cooperative, the voting of the members, the voting rights still depend on the amount of money that you chip in. So the shareholder value is not gone yet. And this means that we are currently looking into also reorganizing the cooperative, and we're considering a one member, one vote system, which is quite radical, but which means that it doesn't depend anymore on how much money you chip in, you just have one vote. And there's a French company called Rail Coop, which is colleagues of us from France that are also cooperative. and who apply this kind of system, and they use every member's knowledge and skills. If they want to contribute, they can contribute. They organize, as they call them, circles of where they speak about certain developments that are paramount to the company. And they streamline the decision making, I think, by means of a sort of consensus decision making, meaning if there's no one against, then we will go for it. So, of course, the questions here are, how do we do that? How do we do it in a way that it remains streamlined? How do we do it in a way that it does not become a liability or a blocking issue? How do we do it in a way that potential investors are not scared away? Because they might think, oh dear, if I have thousands of people that also have an opinion, what is going to happen with my money and how? So these are...
Because sorry, but this is crucial for you. I mean, you need investors, right, to buy the rolling stock.
We need a lot of money.
Yes, again, that's why I'm asking. You need a lot of money. You really need investors from infrastructure, and at the same time, you have this crowd of people.
Yeah, and we need to bring both worlds together. I think I'm convinced that the both worlds have a role to play, and it's up to us to make sure that we create something that can make these two worlds cooperate with each other. So just to give you an impression, a second-hand train carriage costs anything between 25,000 and 500,000 euros, and if you want to renovate it into a sleeping carriage, we had the impression just a while ago that we could do for 500,000 one carriage, but it's probably going to be closer to 1 million per carriage, and one train is 15 carriages, and you need 2 trains to run a daily operation. So you can imagine that we are looking at investment to just create one line. We're looking at an investment of anything between 15 and 30 million euros, and that's, I mean, I think the money is available. But for us, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's of course quite significant, and you don't come that long with this number of very motivated shareholders, which made possible that you take the first steps. And I think this is interesting because now, in a way, also you made noise and you gain traction in the market, and you can make the case towards an investor. So now you're really heading towards the seed stage. But I personally think that's interesting, and I will follow you closely, of course. How you can bring these worlds together, and so I'm curious, and also I think for the audience it's interesting. The number is not limited, right? I mean the number of shareholders.
Well, at this moment,
you need enough money, so.
Yeah, at this moment, it's still limited, because the way it works right now is that we sold a number of certificates based on a valuation of the company. So it's very much a traditional way. And that was also because, very honestly speaking, we had no idea. We are building this up from scratch, and we're learning on the way. And so we did this advised by certain people, and now we're looking at it and thinking, yeah, but this is actually maybe not the way we want to do it. So we need to change that, and we're thinking of a system where we will not limit the number of shareholders or members, but we will just keep the door open continuously. But that means, of course, that the relevant share, or the relative share, sorry, that everyone has will diminish. And in a structure where people are not after shareholder value, that is not a problem. But if people have embarked on the previous promise, so to say, then we need to deal with that. We need to be honest with those people and say, hey, we actually made a mistake here. Or mistake, it sounds very, but I mean, we did something, we went a bit in the wrong direction. This is actually what we wanted. Do you want to stay with us, or do you want to leave? But we want to go in the other direction.
Yeah. I think this is a valid point also, that you say, well, you communicate clearly and openly, all transparent, that we learned something. It's not per se fault, but this is part of an entrepreneurial can change it then. To the audience, please feel free to put your question in the chat. Oh wow, and it's not. a signal if this is not the case. But it looks like at least you can all hear me. Well, I would like to go to one important point, and this is more because you was also talking about the commercial perspective, and you were mentioning when we prepared this call what you're actually selling, because you're selling a way of smarter traveling. I mean, what is the experience you want to create, to sell, to be also different in the market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question I often get is this aimed at leisure travelers or business travelers? But that is the wrong question, I would say, or my answer is always both, because we're aiming this at smart people who appreciate that you can use your time in a different way. With that, I mean that once you get, I mean, the night train is relatively slow, but once you get on board the train, you have all the time of the world just to yourself, because that's what the night train is. You get on board in your, like little cocoon, basically, that goes into the darkness of the night, and all you have to do is just take the journey. So it means that you have time to read, you have time to discuss with someone or to meet new people. I mean, sometimes you meet interesting people on board the night train and have nice chats with them, or you can work a little bit, or you can, play a card game with someone. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, you have time to yourself, and it's a smart way of traveling, because you travel, and while you travel, you sleep, so you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
And this is basically what we're offering. So by doing it this way, you don't need to get out of your bed at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to sit in a plane at 7 and be on time for a meeting somewhere in Prague, for instance. But you arrive more or less rested.
Yes, absolutely. No, I'm a big fan of night trains, exactly for that reason. So I think you mentioned before we prepared the call, you said, well, it's buying time you normally don't have.
Mm-hmm. Because you could see it as an inefficiency, but if you then come to think of it, I mean, when do you actually have time to just be where you are, and there's nothing else you can do, and you just take it as it is? And that is something, I mean, it's also a bit for peace of mind. It can also, I mean, for me, it helps. Even when I had a delay of 7.5 hours last week on the night train back from Munich, I was actually in a state of peace of mind. Yeah, it's what it is. The only thing is, of course, if you don't have network coverage and you can't work really, and you wanted to work, that would be annoying. But this is something that, at least Wi-Fi is provided on board the night train. So of course you need the coverage also from outside the train. But let's see.
Yeah, exactly. So this will also be one of your long list of challenges. On which I ask questions which are so complex, because the topic is overwhelmingly complex, but very interesting. Hey, since we're coming to an end of this session, I still have a question also, which is probably interesting for a lot of people. And now the first connection is coming from Brussels, and then towards Berlin, and then to Prague. But what is then the next one? What you're dreaming of? I mean, it's not that you're doing this tomorrow, but what is the next international connection you're hoping for?
Our base is currently really out from the Netherlands and Belgium. So we are really focusing on developing the network first of all from there. And we are looking to add the next line, hopefully in the so-called 2024 timetable that starts in December 2023. So that's already quite ambitious. And we're looking of going more towards the south. I really can't disclose exact plans, but you can imagine that the south of France, or also Catalonia, or even Italy via France, or Italy via Germany. I mean, those, at least to go to the south of Europe, is a direction that is not yet unlocked from the Netherlands and Belgium market. So this is really what we're looking at the moment.
Yeah. And then you would pass through Germany, not Switzerland, if you go to Italy, right?
Yeah, to Italy, you can pass through Germany, Switzerland. So that would also be beneficial for the German market, I would say. Of course, it's also possible to pass through Belgium and France. So considering the fact that we also serve the Belgian market, we also feel that that is our home base partly. That means that we might go for that route if we would go to Italy.
But you could easily then, because you mentioned also the French railway system, so yeah, then you could easily enter the French market. Or, I mean, how is SNCF? No, I can't imagine though.
No. Well, there's nothing easy about France, but I mean, yeah, it's just difficult in a different way, I would say, because Germany. So if you compare France and Germany as the two power blocks, of course, in Europe and in railways, it's also very much the case. They're very defining. And in Germany, there is competition on the railway. So there's a lot of railway undertakings that can actually serve you as partners. But in very many ways, it's very difficult to enter. For instance, in getting capacity in the timetable, it's a very difficult issue in Germany. In France, there's very few partners that can help you. It's probably also very difficult to obtain capacity in the timetable. So it's definitely going to be very, very challenging. But we see also in France that slowly more companies are coming on the market that could serve as partners, because in France there's the regional liberalization going on, so regional concessions that are being awarded to other companies than SNCF. So slowly it's opening up there as well. But it will definitely, I mean, any route that we will start will be an enormous challenge. I have no illusions.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, since apparently we answered many questions from the audience because there is no further question. One last question from my side. What is your preferred train experience? Which train do you love?
Well, that's probably the most difficult question of the whole interview.
That's why I did the end.
Yeah, there's so many lovely train experiences that you can do in Europe. I would have a very hard time to choose one. Really, anything that can be done with a night train, for me, that's really the top experience. You know, to get in the train in place A and then to sleep and then to wake up and open your curtain and see a different world. I would say that applies to all the night trains that I've taken. That it's always a surprise what you see when you open the curtain. So yeah, let me pick that.
Yes. All right. Thanks so much, Emma. Well, I think we all learned a lot on this extremely interesting and highly complex topic. So as the French would say, chapeau, that you're tackling that and that you try to disrupt this sector and bring the really urgently needed innovation to that. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, at least me, count me in. I will be one of the first because I'm waiting for that quite a long time. And I was very disappointed when they sold it. And I totally did not understand it from a commercial perspective. But well, that's just me. So thanks for being with us. All the best for this adventure and this challenge. Mm-hmm. And we will see your ticket at Deutsche Bahn. I hope so. Very soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if there's anyone who has more questions or wants to link with me on LinkedIn or whatever, just feel free to link or send an email, and always happy to get in touch.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And before we leave to the audience, I hope to see some of you, or perhaps all of you, in the afternoon. The next session on the international track is a session on food tech with a German investor and a co-founder from a plant-based startup, and this is all about vegan eggs. So who wants to join? More than welcome. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day. Bye.